Lori Vallow Daybell, as far as I can remember, has never shed tears publicly regarding her family members' deaths until this week during her opening statement for her trial for her alleged role in her fourth husband, Charles Vallow's unaliving. I can't say the M word. Hi, I'm T, and this is Bedcrime Stories podcast. Please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. Nothing seems to have prompted tears from Lori's blue eyes until it was time for her to spin her version of what led to Charles Vallow's death, a version that has her playing the victim and Charles playing the role of a wise guy. Lori is desperate to sell the idea that she's the innocent victim of a series of unfortunate family tragedies, and she had nothing to do with Charles' death, which she claims happened because he, Charles, initiated an attack on her, chasing her through the house with a baseball bat, and her brother Alex, her savior, came in to protect her, as well as her daughter Kylie, a daughter she not only failed to protect, but a daughter she put into the path with evil. Remember, Lori has been convicted for her role in the brutal unalivings of Tylee and her 7-year-old autistic son, Lori's son, JJ Vallow. I'm going to assume if you're watching this video that you may have caught parts of her opening statement yesterday. Did you notice how Lori sings her own praises as a mother of 5 children, 3 of her own, although one of those was adopted, and 2 stepsons that came with Charles Vallow? Her MO for years was, I'm the best mother and the best wife ever. She paints her marriage to Charles as a very good one that lasted for 13 years. Of course, she ended that when she began her relationship with Chad Daybell, and of course we know what happened to Charles after that. Lori also paints her daughter Tylee as the person who had relationship issues with Charles. She doesn't paint herself as the person who had relationship issues with Charles. Personally, I find it sickening to hear Lori throw Tylee under the bus when Tylee is not here to share her own side of the story. And that's because Lori, Chad Daybell, her brother, Alex Cox, conspired to unalive Tylee. To me, this is Lori re-victimizing Tylee. She's already been convicted for her role in Tylee's brutal death, and yet here she is trying to fob off the blame for the arguments with Charles on Tylee. She also ironically claimed that Tylee grabbed the baseball bat to protect her mother, even though she clearly failed to protect Tylee when it came to the evil and the light and dark charts that Chad Daybell came up with. And again, Lori was re-victimizing Charles as well by claiming that he chased her through the house with the baseball bat. And of course, he's not here to share his side of the story either. It's difficult to accept that Lori, despite being found guilty for her role in that first-degree unaliving of Tylee, JJ, and Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy Daybell, has the right to subject all of us to her fanciful tales as she serves as her own attorney. And FYI, Lori, study what hearsay is before you head back into the courtroom today. The tears that Lori mustered during her opening statements, in my opinion, were for drama and spectacle. I don't believe for a second that Lori is sad when she has to talk about the day that Charles Vallow died. Her request for Kleenex, her wiping away of supposed tears are all part of her act. And she's had a long time to concoct this act and to practice those tears. And I do wonder, is anybody else completely irritated by her repetition of the phrase, "The evidence will show"? If Lori thinks the jurors were able to drink in everything she said with those constant "the evidence will show" statements, I would venture to bet that they did not. The constant repetition of that phrase leads one to stop listening intently. It's so distracting, and it's not the most powerful way to tell a story. Keep your audience enraptured. Plain and simple, Lori Vallow doesn't know how to serve as her own defense attorney, and it's rather galling that she thinks that she's capable of being a defense attorney when you think about all the years of study that it takes to become a really good attorney. I also find it appalling that she calls what happened to Charles, Tylee, JJ, and Tammy a family tragedy. All these untimely deaths happened as a result of Lori and Chad Daybell and her brother Alex Cox and their delusions, their desire for important roles in their newly founded religion, their desire for a luxurious life together, especially she and Chad, without the constraints of an opinionated teenager who could smell BS from miles away, and a little autistic boy who only wanted to be loved, to have his mother's attention, as well as her patience. Both Lori and Chad hope to secure large life insurance payouts to fund their life together. The truth of the matter is, Chad Daybell is a mediocre writer who doesn't appear to have been a solid breadwinner like Charles Vallow was, and Lori had been a stay-at-home mom, supported by Charles' hard work and financial success. The part of the story where Lori should have legit cried was when the prosecutor and her witnesses described how Charles died. The part of the story where Lori should have legit cried was when the prosecutor and her witnesses described how Charles died. Charles was upright when he was injured by a projectile from Alex's weapon that tore straight through his heart. Charles lived long enough to lift one of his hands to cover the wound. Alex then sent another projectile into Charles' abdomen while Charles was lying on the floor, dying. And I use these bizarre terms, projectile, because I can't say the actual terms. And after Alex did all that, he didn't bother to call 911 for 47 full minutes. And unbeknownst to little JJ, the one stable, loving parent was on the floor of a rental home that he, Charles, was paying for, and he was dying. Now, Lori and Alex were not smart enough to put the bat that they claimed Charles hit Alex with on Charles' left side. Charles was left-handed, as Lori even points out in her opening statements. Yet the bat was placed on his right side in what had to have been a staged crime scene. And note that Charles was also a talented baseball player. If he had planned to attack Alex, Alex would probably have been the one on the floor with a very severe wound that day. And when we see Tylee now in the police body cam footage after Charles was harmed, shall we say, she appeared terrified. And I'm sure that she was aware that her mother and her uncle Alex had conspired, allegedly, to unalive Charles. And she probably thought maybe they could do that to me too. The only problem was she was dependent on her mother for shelter, food, and money. I would venture to bet that the only reason Lori's son Colby is alive is because he was older and living outside of Lori and Charles' house. No one was safe, in my opinion, around Lori Chad and Alex. And in my opinion, despite the medical examiner saying that Alex Cox died on December 12th, 2019 of natural causes, specifically bilateral pulmonary, let me see if I can get this word right, thromboli, or blood clots in the lungs, as well as cardiovascular disease, I'm not convinced that Lori and Chad played no role in his death. Remember, Chad gave him a very long prayer over the phone that day. And here's where karma really is a biatch. Alex died while sitting on the toilet in the bathroom of his new bride's home, which makes me think about Elvis. Elvis also died on the toilet. But Alex had it coming, in my opinion, for his alleged evil deeds as the family annihilator. I just hope that in this trial, the male jurors aren't swayed or charmed by Lori, as the Chandler police were in the aftermath of Charles' unaliving. To me, those cops were clearly swayed by Lori's little girl voice, her blonde locks, her witty quips, and her little smiles. I say that because I don't know how they couldn't see right from the jump that Charles' death was not down to Alex defending himself. What's also sad about Charles' death is that he was seeing a woman named Nancy, and after he died and didn't contact her, Nancy, who I think must live in another city, thought he was ghosting her. And in a sense, he was in a very literal way. If only time could be turned around and Charles could have seen that it wasn't safe to go inside that home. But of course he had to that day to get JJ to take him to school. And I'm sure Lori wasn't about to come out with JJ to Charles' rental car. Charles Vallow, in my opinion, was the only person who had the right insight into Lori at the time. Her brother Adam may also have been aware, but of course I don't think Charles and Adam were, well, actually Charles was, because he did go to the police and tell them that he feared for his life. I do think it's hard for people to imagine, even when they've been threatened, that somebody's actually going to follow through with such a brutal and cruel act. We shall see what today brings during Lori's second day of her trial and her second day serving as her own attorney. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time on Bedcrime Stories.